All right, guys. So James Gunn and Peter Safran have just come out and done another little press conference with a bunch of reporters in a little room. He did the same thing back in I think it was like 2023 when he made his initial slate. And yeah, we have actually a lot to talk about here. So let's just jump right into it. So Variety has a bunch of highlights that we're just going to read through. So James Gunn talked about the two Batman movies, Clayface and The Penguin Season 2. Given that Batman has remained the most consistently successful DC character in film and TV for decades, it perhaps should not be a surprise that Gunn and Safran spent considerable time on updates about DC Studios' expansive intentions for the Caped Crusader. First up, Clayface. Safran confirmed that British director James Watkins' Speak No Evil is in talks to direct what he characterized as a body horror film, and Gunn said they hope works as a pure horror movie for somebody who doesn't care at all about DC. They plan to start shooting this summer and have also started the casting process. Gunn has said that actors who voice a role in an animated project will also play them in live action, but while Alan Tudyk has voiced Clayface in two DC animated series as a buffoon in Harley Quinn and as a ruthless assassin in Creature Commandos, Gunn said that he won't play the role in the feature film since that wasn't a primary role for Tudyk, who also plays Dr. Phosphorus on Creature Commandos. So that's interesting, I guess. Okay, so as far as the director is concerned, I'm not really too familiar with him. I didn't watch Speak No Evil, although I didn't hear particularly great things about it. Although, from what I remember about what I heard about it, I think people were most. I think people were mostly not hooked by the story, which I don't think or I don't know, he might have written it, but I think I remember people saying that it was directed well. So we'll see if that ends up being a good choice. But I do like the idea of making a Clayface horror movie. And you know what I also like about this whole Clayface situation? It's that uh, I like that James Gunn is seemingly sticking to his guns, right? When he said that they're not necessarily going to be greenlighting projects based off of their big master plan and well, what should come first, right? What makes sense to come first from a business perspective, where it seems like their Clayface project is just kind of ready to go, right? Like Mike Flanagan came in with a really great script, and they're not going to arbitrarily not make it just because the script for Brave and the Bold still needs some work. I kind of like that. I kind of respect that. So, a lot of people are saying, why is a Clayface movie being made before the Batman movie? That doesn't make any sense. And it's exactly. They're not just making it, they're not just deciding this stuff for business reasons. They're deciding a lot of this stuff based on story reasons, which I have to respect. You know what I mean? And then, yeah, as far as Alan Tudyk not playing him, I mean, that is kind of a bummer just because, I mean, I guess I understand what they're saying, where it is true that his primary role in Creature Commandos was Dr. Phosphorus, but I feel like Alan Tudyk would kill a live action Clayface. And Dr. Phosphorus is like a CGI role. So I feel like him playing Dr. Phosphorus in live action wouldn't even actually mean anything. I mean, I guess if they did flashbacks in live action, but I feel like they did all of the flashbacks that you would need in Creature Commandos. So even if Dr. Phosphorus showed up in a live action project at some point, I don't know. I feel like they wouldn't even do a flashback. I don't know. Seems like a missed opportunity to not have Alan Tudyk play him in live action in the Clayface movie, but I'm sure they'll get somebody good. Anyways, moving on. Safran offered a brief update on of sorts on the Batman Part 2, saying that writer-director Matt Reeves has yet to turn in a full script, but what we have read so far is incredibly encouraging. I'm sorry, but it's absurd. It's absurd. But, there have been other rumors that I will just mention here that the reason why Matt Reeves is taking so long on the script is because he had like personal issues that he was dealing with. And listen, if it's like health related issues or, maybe somebody he was dealing with like his kid or something like that, I don't even know. I don't care to speculate, actually. That's obviously understandable, right? Friends, family, your health, all that comes first. So, sure, if that is what's happening. But, little bro, you've had like 2 years at this point. It's like the Batman came out in 2023. But this is actually something that I've mentioned before. I also just think that Matt Reeves is a slow writer because people don't remember, but there was actually like kind of this long drawn out process for the first Batman movie where he was announced. I want to say in like 2017, and then we didn't get the Batman until 2023. Now, obviously, COVID had something to do with that, but still, it's like it took him a long ass time to make the first Batman movie. So I do think that to some extent, Matt Reeves is just kind of a slow writer. I actually do think that has a lot to do with it, but we'll see. They had even less to say about the possibility of a second season of the spin-off series The Penguin, with Colin Farrell following the release of Part 2. We don't know, Safran said. There are a lot of moving pieces, probably most important Colin himself, and 800 pounds of makeup Gunn added, alluding to the extensive prosthetics Farrell must wear for the role. I think they're going to make a season 2 of The Penguin. Listen, I think after all the award success and how incredibly well received the show was, I know Colin Farrell had those initial concerns of like, do I really want to go through another season of filming under these prosthetics? And I get it. It seems like hell under there. I think he's going to do it. I think just for his career, I think Farrell will do it. And, the showrunners have talked about how they're working on a second season already. Like, they're, like, developing it. So, I think it'll happen. But we'll see. DC Studios also remains in active development, Safran said on Batman the Brave and the Bold. The film meant to bring the Dark Knight into the main DCU. Reeves' Gothamverse exists in its own timeline. So, yeah, they're reiterating here that Robert Pattinson is not going to be the DCU Batman. That has, of course, been a rumor that we've all been speculating about. That story is coming together nicely, Safran said, and Gunn added that he has been especially focused on the project, given that everybody knows I love Batman. So, yeah, as far as The Brave and the Bold is concerned, he's saying that, yep, we're still working on it. Of course, some of the rumors surrounding Brave and the Bold is that Andy Muschietti is not directing the movie. This Variety article doesn't really mention anything about that. So we'll see where that goes. I wonder if Gunn, I don't know if he would do this, because he's mentioned in interviews, and he also apparently said here in this little thing here that he always talks about how much he loves Batman. Could we see Gunn direct Superman and then turn around and direct the other Batman movie? I don't know. I feel like he keeps on talking about how much he loves Batman. I'm starting to wonder if maybe he'll do that. It would be interesting. Like, I don't think we've ever had a director direct both a Superman and a Batman movie. Well, I guess unless you count Zack Snyder directing Superman and Batman v Superman. Does that count? I'm going to say it doesn't count so that it sounds like I've made a salient point. Unfortunately, Gunn said it was very unlikely that the Batman star Robert Pattinson would reprise the role for Brave and the Bold, but he did not foreclose the possibility that the DCU version of the character could show up before his titular film. I wouldn't rule anything out, Gunn said. He could show up in something else, but the actor doesn't exist yet. I mean, I feel like he must be alluding to like Clayface, right? It's like, what else would Batman show up in? I guess actually they're also working on a Teen Titans movie, so maybe he would show up in Teen Titans. He's like, it's like he's dropping off his son Damien at a daycare, which is the Teen Titans team. Actually, that would also make sense. To be clear, we'll see. uh, Animation, dynamic duo, Blue Beetle, and 3 new TV series. As first reported in October, DC Studios is in pre-production on the animated feature film Dynamic Duo, Safran said about the 2 Robins who fought alongside Batman, Dick Grayson and Jason Todd. It provides a kind of perfect on-ramp for family audiences into the world of Gotham, Safran said. Yeah, Dynamic Duo was like an interesting one because I it seems like I can't tell if it's a story where Dick Grayson and Jason Todd are like they were Robins and they're now like going on off on their own adventure, or if it's a story about Dick Grayson and Jason Todd before they ever met Batman. I'm actually not sure which of those 2 stories it's going to be. I don't know. Either way though, I saw the I don't know, you can actually look up like the animation of the studio that's making it, and some of the stuff that they're doing with like stop motion looks really fucking cool. Yeah, I actually pulled it up here. So this is not Dynamic Duo, but this is a reel from the studio that they have working on the movie. This looks unlike any other like stop motion stuff I've ever seen. Like this looks really interesting. Like look at that. Honestly, this kind of looks like Gotham, to be honest with you. Yeah, really interesting stuff. I'm definitely going to be fascinated to see what this movie ends up being, but this like animation alone makes me interested in the movie, like aside from it being just like a DC related thing. But anyways, we'll see what that ends up looking like. Uh-oh, spoilers. All right. The studio is also still in active development on an animated series about Blue Beetle that would continue the events from the 2023 feature film. I feel like this line here is kind of confirmation that Blue Beetle is canon. I feel like if they're saying that it's continuing the events of the movie, I feel like this is canonizing the Blue Beetle movie, because I know they were very cagey about that before. But anyways, which was one of the last titles made under the old DC regime. Safran said he expects the executive producers Angel Manuel Soto, who directed the film, and Gareth Dunnett Alcocer, who wrote the screenplay, to present the project for a possible greenlight pretty soon. Miguel Buga is directing the series, and Christian Martinez is writing. I like the idea of a Blue Beetle animated series because I think that it's kind of like, I guess, saving Blue Beetle from just not continuing in any form after his movie pretty brutally flopped at the box office. But I think it's James Gunn not being like too reactionary, right? Like, I think the old regime would have probably been like, oh, well, I guess audiences just are never going to possibly care about a Blue Beetle movie, or about Blue Beetle in any capacity, instead of recognizing that it probably has a lot to do with just the state of the DCEU at that point. Because we then later saw The Flash just brutally bomb at the box office as well, and nobody has come out of that movie going like, oh, well, people just don't care about Batman, right? Like that's not a conclusion that people are obviously going to take from that from that box office outcome. So I kind of like that he's like, okay, we're not just going to go into development on a sequel necessarily, but we'll give you an animated series, and I'm assuming we'll put Jolo in a movie at some point. Maybe Teen Titans. That would actually maybe be a good place for him. And then maybe if the character catches on, maybe we'll try again with the movie. I like that. I like what James Gunn is doing here. And I'm gonna be honest, man. Like especially like when I look at your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man versus the MCU Spider-Man movies, it's like, man, I don't even really care that much, to be honest with you. Like I am loving your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, whereas as time goes on, I get less and less enthused about the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. And it's like, I'm satisfied with a little animated series because it's telling a great story. And I don't necessarily need like the movie versions in order to be satisfied as a Spider-Man fan. If we get a fantastic Blue Beetle animated series, I won't necessarily care that we're not getting more Blue Beetle movies. That's just me personally. He also announced that they've greenlit 3 younger skewing animated series, all overseen by executive producer Sam Registernand, produced by Warner Brothers Animation and DC Studios. My Adventures with Green Lantern. Sorry. This browser is being weird today. All right, sorry about that. My Adventures with Green Lantern will follow high school student Jessica Cruz, who has her life upended when, according to an official logline, a Green Lantern power ring falls from the sky and chooses Cruz to be its champion. Things get even worse when more debris from the Lanterns' ancient space war arrives, along with their alien foes. Jake Wyatt is executive producing, and Stephanie Gonzaga is a co-executive producer. So, by the way, if you see the My Adventures in the title, that is because this is going to be in the same universe as My Adventures with Superman. Jake Wyatt on Twitter actually confirmed that. Says, we're making a new show. Some of you had questions. The show will take place in the same timeline as My Adventures with Superman. Stoked to expand and explore that universe with my buddy Stephanie Gonzaga. So, hell yeah, man. Listen, I absolutely adore My Adventures with Superman. So, like, I'm not really that big of a Green Lantern fan at all, really. Definitely not a Jessica Cruz fan, but anything that team does, I will absolutely be interested in. So, sure. DC Superpowers takes place at the Alliance School for Heroes and focuses on new students Lightning, Flash, like what Flash I would be interested to know, Plastic Man, Aqua Girl, Green Lantern, again, which Green Lantern, and Terra, who level up their powers under the supervision of Principal Martian Manhunter in the hopes of one day graduating and becoming the next generation of Earth's defenders. Matt Beans is executive producing, and Michael Chang is a supervising producer. This is an interesting one. Gonna be honest, not super enthused by that description. I don't know. It's like seeing a bunch of like kid versions of superheroes going to a school, and like Martian Manhunter is the principal. It's like it seems like the kind of show that it's like, I'm gonna need to see a trailer. Like, I need to know if this is made for literal babies or if it's like My Adventures with Superman, where it actually has an engaging storyline. We'll see. It's one that I do need to be a little more sold on for me to get super interested in it. We also have, finally, Starfire serves as the origin story for the fan favorite title character, perhaps best known as part of the Teen Titans. The show follows her adventures after she uses an ancient spaceship she discovers on her home planet of Tamaran to escape her planet and explore the stars. Along the way, she'll meet space biker Crush, plant-loving Fern, and the magical princess Amethyst of Gem World. And together, they will uncover the deepest reaches of the DC universe, save space dolphins, surf Technicolor nebulas, and boldly soar into the unknown. Josie Campbell is executive producing, and Brian Drew Hard is co-executive producing. Yeah, another interesting one. It's one that I feel like I'm gonna have to see a little bit more of in order to get super on board. It's like, is this made for 12-year-old girls specifically? Or is it something that I, as a 24-year-old man, will be able to get down with? I mean, listen, as long as if it has a compelling story, then hey, you got me. That's really it at the end of the day, right? Obviously, like stuff like Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man and My Adventures with Superman are also made for children. But they actually put a decent amount of effort into telling a compelling story along the way. So I am open to being sold on Superpowers and the Starfire animated series. Obviously, I love Starfire and Teen Titans. I just feel like I wonder if a Starfire focused show is just going to mainly try to appeal to young girls. It's possible. But, I also do operate under the philosophy of, like, just because something is made for kids doesn't mean it can't also be good, right? Like, it's not like a one thing or the other situation. You can and should do both, just to be clear. All right, and then we also have, like, logos for all of them. So here we have the My Adventures with Green Lantern logo. Looks very much like the My Adventures with Superman logo. So, looks cool. And this is the logo for Superpowers. Doesn't really give me any indication on what the show is going to end up looking like or feeling like. And then this is Starfire. I don't know, based on the title treatment, it kind of makes me, it gives me like Cartoon Network vibes. I don't know if that's going to end up being accurate or not, but those are the vibes that I'm rating. All right, moving on. Sergeant Rock, Teen Titans, and other rumored projects. Gunn and Safran engaged in some of their most telling exchanges whenever they were asked about DC projects they had not yet officially announced. Safran, for instance, pointed out that Daniel Craig was never attached to a Sergeant Rock movie. For those of you that don't know, it was recently reported that Daniel Craig exited the Sergeant Rock movie, and now they're saying that he was actually never attached. The actor had been floated for the role due to his creative relationship with the film's prospective director, Luca Guadagnino, who directed Craig in 2024's Queer. But, we never met with Daniel, Safran said. He was just an idea. Well, we never really even announced Sergeant Rock, Gunn added. Later, a reporter asked about the status of a screenplay about the Teen Titans. Oh, I guess I should talk about Sergeant Rock a little more deeply. Definitely is a weird pick for a movie. I mean, I don't know that much about Sergeant Rock, but apparently he literally is just like a soldier in World War II. I don't think he's even like Captain America, where he has some kind of where he has super strength or anything. I think he's literally just a soldier. So it definitely was always a weird movie to make, but I mean, I guess if you kind of have more overt science fiction elements in it, right? Like more alternative history aspects to it that sort of make it more DC-esque. I mean, that could be an interesting movie for sure. But definitely a weird one. But again, maybe it's the case like with Clayface, where Luca Guadagnino gave James Gunn and Peter Safran a really cool pitch for a movie that he wanted to make, and they were like, hey, Luca Guadagnino, I really liked Challengers. Sure. We'll let you make a Sergeant Rock movie. Especially if they give it a reasonable budget. Obviously they shouldn't make one for $40 million. Sure, why the hell not? You know what I mean? All right. Later, a reporter asked about the status of a screenplay about the Teen Titans, a group of young superheroes including Nightwing, Cyborg, and the aforementioned Starfire, written by Anna Nagira, who also wrote Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. The script's not ready yet, Safran said. I mean, I think we said that Anna Nogueira is writing it. We haven't said that, Gunn said. No, I think it was out there, Safran said. I think it was out there. It's out there, Gunn said. The implication being they never officially confirmed it until now. It was something that Anna was really impassioned about, and she turned over an amazing script for us, he continued. She's fiddling with that now, but it's definitely not a finished script. I think when he says that she turned over an amazing script for us, I think he's talking about the Supergirl script, which they seem really big on. Like Gunn has said on multiple occasions that the Supergirl script is incredible. I don't think he's saying that the Teen Titans script is incredible because it doesn't seem like she's finished with that yet. So just wanted to point out that distinction there. But yeah, okay, I guess I should mention a Teen Titans movie. This one is one of those weird ones where I feel like, or did I say this already at the beginning of the video? I think I might have already said this. But yeah, it's like, can you make a Teen Titans movie before Brave and the Bold? I don't know. I mean, I think I already addressed this actually at the beginning of the video. I think the Teen Titans movie, like, it came up. But it seems like Anna Nogueira is still writing the script. Maybe they'll finish the Brave and the Bold script before this Teen Titans script, and we won't have to worry about it. But I do feel like having like a Robin, I would assume it would be Damian Wayne in Teen Titans before him being introduced in the Brave and the Bold. Not even introduced. I guess I'm operating under the assumption that the Brave and the Bold is going to be like an origin story for Damian Wayne as Robin. But maybe that's not even the case. I guess I am making a lot of assumptions, but I don't know. I guess it definitely does feel like you would put you would introduce us to Damian Wayne and then have Teen Titans almost be a spin-off from Brave and the Bold with Damian Wayne leading the Teen Titans. But it might not even play out like that, so we'll see. The reporter followed up by asking about a prospective Deathstroke/Bane script written by Matthew Orden. I'm going to be honest, I totally forgot about those rumors about a Deathstroke Bane movie. You say that like we've said that there's a Deathstroke Bane script, Safran replied with a smile. He confirmed that Orden is working on a script for DC Studios, which Gunn said is something kind of like a Deathstroke Bane story. I don't even know what that means. I mean, I feel like that's essentially them confirming that yes, there is work being done on a Deathstroke Bane movie. I don't know. Do Deathstroke and Bane even have like a relationship in the comics, or is this like a unique pairing? I'm not really sure, but I mean, I guess I'd be open to it. I don't know. We'll see. I just don't have much to say. These exchanges made plain one of the challenges of running a superhero studio. Even the possibility of a new movie or TV show featuring one of these characters as a development projects that may never come to pass for a host of reasons is enough to unleash a torrent of headlines. Gunn and Safran have clearly decided that it's worth the trouble to maintain an ongoing open dialogue with the media and with fans about what they're doing, but it was also evident that their decision still comes with its share of headaches. I mean, that's actually a really great point. Like, so many like of the reports that come out, right? Like Daniel Craig leaves Sergeant Rock, right? Like, actors leaving projects for a variety of reasons are things that happen in Hollywood constantly. And it doesn't necessarily mean that there's trouble with the movie. It doesn't necessarily mean that, oh no, the studio is, things are going bad at the studio because this actor left this project or this director is leaving the project and yada yada yada, right? Everything going on with Andy Muschietti. But because there is this spotlight on DC Studios, because there are so many passionate DC fans that are very opinionated, it ends up turning into these scandals. When maybe it doesn't necessarily, it shouldn't necessarily be the case. Honestly, actually, very good point brought up by Variety. After fielding the question about Pattinson playing Batman in The Brave and the Bold, for example, Gunn sighed in exasperation. These questions become headlines because they say, "Have you ever talked about this?" He said, "We've talked about literally every permutation on the way to come into this job. In terms of how were we going to handle it, what actors were going to continue over, and were we going to merge? Or what were we going to merge? We've talked about everything. Have we ever talked about Grant Gustin? Yeah. Have we ever talked about Robert Pattinson? Yeah. We've talked about all those things. But serious conversations? No." So, yeah, I mean, very, very interesting answer from James Gunn, right? Saying, like, yeah, like, we've talked about all of these wild things, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean anything, which, yeah, again, like I said, studio, like, a lot of the things that have happened with DC Studios have also happened at almost every other studio. Or it might not even be hyperbole to say that it has happened with every other studio, but other studios just don't have the spotlight that DC Studios has. Booster Gold, Paradise Lost, Swamp Thing, Waller, and The Authority. Gunn and Safran also briefed reporters about the status of some other projects they'd first announced in 2023. They remain in development on the Wonder Woman prequel series Paradise Lost, and they're also moving forward on developing the superhero comedy series Booster Gold, after waiting on a particular showrunner/creator who had expressed interest in the show but ultimately moved on. So, definitely one of the weirder things about DC Studios is just the lack of Wonder Woman. Yeah, it is definitely weird that they're not developing a Wonder Woman project, but are instead developing a Wonder Woman prequel series. I do wonder if that is one of the few things where James Gunn is being more strategic about, where maybe he has a specific idea of how he wants to introduce Wonder Woman, and he feels like he should put out this prequel series before doing that. I kind of do think that is the case, just because I don't understand why you wouldn't be making Wonder Woman otherwise. But yeah, not much else to say about the prequel series. It doesn't necessarily seem like it's in development hell or anything. It's just being worked on. So we'll see what happens with that. Interesting that there apparently was a showrunner for Booster Gold. Nobody's reported on it, so I have no idea who it would have been, but it seems like that guy left, so now that's up in the air and they're still working on it. Slash, I guess, I'm assuming looking for another showrunner. So we'll see. Three other titles don't quite have as much wind in their sails. The horror film Swamp Thing has been stuck in limbo, while director James Mangold focused on his Oscar-nominated Bob Dylan biopic, A Complete Unknown. The Peacemaker... Oh, well, I'll say this about... Or wait, hold on, never mind. The Peacemaker spin-off series Waller with Viola Davis has had what Gunn called a bumpy road, struggling to land the right script. The show, which was meant to precede season 2 of Peacemaker, also had to be reconceived after Peacemaker wound up going into production first. So, what I will say about Swamp Thing is that this thing here about how there isn't much wind in the sails of Swamp Thing and Waller, I will say, I think that as far as Swamp Thing is concerned, I'm thinking that James Mangold has indeed chosen what his next project is going to be, because it's been reported that James Mangold is currently deciding on whether he wants to do Star Wars, his Star Wars movie, or Swamp Thing as his next project. I think he's essentially chosen Star Wars. And I think Swamp Thing seems like a movie where I think James Gunn is probably just gonna wait on James Mangold because it doesn't necessarily seem like a project that they need to make anytime soon. And I'm sure James Gunn really wants to work with James Mangold, so he'll wait him. He's not just gonna slap another director onto it. And with Waller, it's kind of interesting. I don't know. I get Secret Invasion vibes from Waller, where it's like this weird show that it's like it could work. Like you could make a Nick Fury show if you really wanted to. It's like you could make a Waller show if you really wanted to. But it's funny that the difference between Marvel Studios and DC Studios is that Marvel Studios was like, have you figured out your take on Secret Invasion? Not really. We'll make it anyways. And James Gunn is like, so have you guys figured out your take on Waller? Not really. All right, well, keep working on it and let me know when you let me know when you have it right. Which I can't. I will continue. I will continue endlessly glazing James Gunn's approach to all of this of not making a project until script is ready because it just is the right way to go about things. The project that suffered the most, it seems, is The Authority. In the 2023 presentation, Gunn spoke at length about the movie, which he said would follow the events of Superman, as it tracked a team of superheroes who adopt a more unsparing ends justify the means philosophy than the Man of Steel in the intervening 2 years. However, The Authority has moved to the back burner. It's a very big movie if you're going to do The Authority properly, Safran said, and some story elements perhaps that are in Superman and some of the other films that we've fast-tracked step a little bit on The Authority. Gunn added that the script also had a harder time coming along, so the film hasn't been as much of a priority because it has been subsumed by everything. From The Brave and the Bold to Paradise Lost. I mean, The Authority was always an interesting project, right? Where it was this group of superheroes that aren't necessarily bad, but I guess they have more of like a Punisher philosophy, it seems, where they're willing to do things that, Superman and Batman aren't willing to do. So that's an interesting premise, of course. But it's not something that I'm like, where is the Authority movie? So, yeah, keep working on it and make it when you feel like it's right. The Zack Snyder photo. Gunn still occasionally does post to his Blue Sky Instagram and Twitter/X accounts. Most recently, a photo of him with Zack Snyder, the filmmaker whose past tenure at the helm of DC's live-action films generated a fiercely passionate online fan base, went instantly viral. Asked if the photo meant that they've discussed a possible... Sorry, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm very sleepy. Asked if the photo meant that they've discussed a possible creative collaboration, Gunn said that he and Snyder, who've known each other since Snyder... By the way, can I just say, I feel like this is also just not written the best. So I'm going to say that as well. Who've known each other since Snyder directed Gunn's script for 2004's Dawn of the Dead, sometimes talk about different things, but they took the picture specifically because they knew it would melt the internet. We knew that people have this view that somehow we have been pitted against each other, Gunn said. It's odd to have someone who you're friendly with in real life be the guy that is positioned as your Lex Luthor, or I'm his Lex Luthor. It's just such a weird dynamic that's been created between factions online. Let me actually pull up that photo. Okay, so this is the picture that they're talking about, and this is where all the the conspiracy theorists were getting their ammo from. So it's obviously this picture here of James Gunn and Zack Snyder, and the wood paneling behind them. I can't find I've been trying to find the photo that I'm thinking about, but a lot of people are theorizing that because there was this other photo of like all of the creative heads of DC Studios, right? James Gunn, I think Jim Lee, and some other people. They also took a photo where there was like similar wood paneling behind them. People are thinking that wood paneling is in the DC Studios head offices, and And because that photo with Zack Snyder has that wood paneling, that Zack Snyder is meeting with James Gunn about directing a potential project. That's obviously conspiracy theory. Not the worst theory by any means. But do I necessarily think that that's what's happening? I'm not confident in it, but I will say, like obviously, like they said, right? Like James Gunn is claiming that they took the picture, just to do a little trolling, just to be like, hey man, me and Zack Snyder are cool, but I I think Zack Snyder is probably thinking about directing a movie for DC Studios because I don't know. I don't think that they would just post a picture just for a little bit of trolling. I think that they are hinting at something. And you know what? We were just talking about The Authority. I think that would be a perfect movie for Zack Snyder to direct because like I mean, first of all, Zack Snyder has not exactly uh his past few films have not exactly been critical darlings, to say the least. To be fair, they have been fairly successful, I think, in terms of Netflix viewership, right? I'm thinking of Army of the Dead and his Rebel Moon movies. But I watched Army of the Dead. I thought it was terrible. I did not watch the Rebel Moon movies. According to everything I've heard, they're also terrible. It kind of seems like Zack Snyder just shouldn't be writing movies. Like I think it would behoove Zack Snyder to direct a DC Studios project that he didn't write. I mean, that just seems like a good move for him at this point. And if you're James Gunn, I think it would behoove you to have Zack Snyder directing a movie with you because obviously, like, there's this like unhinged Snyder cult that is just hating on everything James Gunn is doing because it's not Zack Snyder, and so they view, James Gunn as like public enemy number one. I mean, you would undercut a lot of that, a lot of those unhinged people, if you had the man himself working for you, right? I think it would make sense. And by the way, I don't think that Zack Snyder's a bad director at all. I think that, his take on Superman and his take on DC isn't necessarily for everyone, or it's not for the comic book purists. But I don't think he's a terrible director. I think he's a bad writer. But I don't think he's a bad director. So I would actually like to see an Authority movie directed by Zack Snyder. But we'll see. All right, the wider DCU story. There were times when it sounded like the creative mandates Gunn and Safran had set for the larger DC universe were somewhat at cross purposes. On the one hand, Gunn said that they remain steadfast in making sure that each of these projects works as a standalone project, so that you can go see Superman and you can watch Lanterns without having to see both of them. On the other hand, Safran said that the entire reason they're relaunching DC Studios as an endeavor, unifying all DC projects across film, TV, animation, and video games, is that people want to see these iconic characters interacting. To that end, Gunn said that he has mapped out a roughly 6-year plan to tell a wider story that would result in a culminating project akin to Marvel's Avengers movies, though he still insists that each individual project works as its own thing. It isn't like they're chapters of an overall story, he continued. They're characters that are part of an overall story. That may seem like a distinction without a difference, but Gunn is clear that he knows where the overall story is heading. I'm intimately involved in all that, he said. I get what he means, right? Like, you look at like the first 3 phases of the MCU, right? Where, Thor or whatever was its own like standalone movie relatively, but they did its own little world building, right? Where you sort of learned about the cosmos of the MCU. You learned about, or I think you saw the Infinity Gauntlet in one of the scenes. Was the Tesseract in the first Thor movie? No, sorry. The Tesseract was in the first Captain America movie, which, I mean, hey, good example, right? Like, Captain America was very much its own movie, but you learn about the Tesseract, which ended up being one of the Infinity Stones, right? Guardians of the Galaxy, its own movie, but you learn about the Infinity Stones. It's all sort of building up to Infinity War, but each of those projects were their own standalone thing. I don't know. Like, I feel like you can totally understand what James Gunn is saying here. Um, I don't understand why the Variety, why the guy writing this article is like, but what does he mean? I don't understand what James Gunn is saying. It's like, come on. All right. Superheroes in Trump's America. With Gunn's Superman film due to open in July, 6 months into the second Trump administration, the director was asked about his version of Superman is right for the current cultural moment. Okay, this is just badly written. Okay, it's not even me. It's not me being too tired to read. All right, suck my dick. In some ways, I would say it's the right Superman because I don't think he's a part of the cultural moment, Gunn replied. He's a character that stands for something that is solid, for basic human morals, basic human integrity, the basic belief in protecting others, the weak, and being good to people and being honest. He stands for what I think of as the rules that don't change. Another reporter then brought up how skittish studios have become around questions of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the wake of President Trump's relentless campaign to rid not just the federal government, but much of American public life of DEI initiatives, specifically, and women and people of color in positions of power generally. Okay, again, it's a badly written article. Anyways, it was a natural question to ask, but a precarious one, given how any public comments defending diversity could be commandeered by Trump's supporters to derail the Superman marketing campaign before it even started. Gunn's response proposed a different strategy: plead ignorance. I know what you're saying, he said to the reporter. I understand your words. It's a funny way of saying like, I don't really want to address what you asked me. But I've been off working on stories for 3 years, and I just try to tell the stories, or the best stories I possibly can. And that's all I care about, he added, that he doesn't read the news anymore or spend nearly as much time on social media as he used to, in part for his own mental health, but mostly because running a studio while also working directly on Superman and Peacemaker means he doesn't have the time. We're just off trying to make the best movies we can, bro, in the best way that we can, bruv. He said, no matter who is telling me who I'm supposed to put in my movie for whatever reason, I don't give a shit. I was always about creating the best story possible with the best characters possible. It was that way, 5 years ago, and it is that way today. All right, so that is the article. So I guess in regarding to his Trump comments, I mean, it's a good statement, right? Like, you don't want to, you don't want to just come out and be like, Orange Man bad, right? Because that just comes off, unfortunately, as like kind of cringe, and you're going to end up alienating a bunch of people. But I mean, I appreciate that James Gunn is not also like pathetically just bowing down to Trump like we've seen a lot of other companies do, where, again, he's not like antagonizing MAGA, but he's also not being like, yeah, man, there have been too many black people in in media, and they have been like what's the word I'm trying to think of? Like, they have been put in movies unnecessarily and without merit or whatever. And just like when you look at the projects that we're talking about today, right? Blue Beetle, Hispanic character. They're making a Jessica Cruz Green Lantern show, and she's like a Hispanic Green Lantern. We have Mr. Terrific. He's a black guy. He's going to be in Superman. So clearly, I don't think that James Gunn is going to be making decisions based on like, oh no, people are going to call this woke, right? I mean, he's making a Waller show for Christ's sake. I also want to say that in The Authority, I think the two leads of The Authority are two gay superheroes, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, clearly I don't think James Gunn is going to end up bowing to Trump in any meaningful way. I don't think he's going to start like changing his stories. because of all the shenanigans that are going with Trump shutting down DEI initiatives and making planes crash or whatever. By the way, that's more of like a dark humor. I don't actually pretend to know why those planes crashed. Just to be clear, I'm not Donald Trump. Just to be clear, I'm not going to make baseless assumptions. But anyways, we don't need to get into all that. No. Yeah, I think it's a good statement, and I'm pretty confident that James Gunn is just going to tell earnest, genuine stories. I also don't think he's going to cuck out like Marvel Studios just did with Captain America Brave New World, where in an effort to not offend anybody, they ended up appealing to nobody. I have confidence that James Gunn is that, like, whether or not the movies will be good, well, who knows, but I think that he will be telling earnest stories. But yeah, man, I mean, listen, a lot of shit we talked about today. Yeah, let me know what you think about any and all of it in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.